The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Blake Anderson from Facebook.com/GotBlake.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Bryce Wiener from BlockTech.
Thanks for having me on.
Victoria Van Echt.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
I say it wrong the whole time. Megan Lords.
Thanks for having me.
Christoph Atlas.
Hey, everybody.
And I'm Thomas Hunt. Moving on to issue 1. Charlie Shrem pleads guilty to Silk Road charges. Former CEO of BitInstant, Charlie Shrem will, according to the terms of the plea bargain, forfeit $950,000 to the U.S. government and be required to serve a prison term of up to 60 months. Blake Anderson, your thoughts?
Well, I just think it's very bizarre that the government would, steal money from somebody for a victimless crime or for something that they just, assume is damaging because of the thickness of the law and legal books and where we've gotten. Like, really, if you look at, what's the physical material damage measurable to various different parties from, Charlie, that would be really, really hard to measure. So it's really, we've gotten into a weird space with that kind of thing. And I just think that it's ridiculous, and I feel really, really bad for Charlie.
It's not entirely clear what harms the government is presenting. Bryce.
Well, and that's kind of the curious thing about the whole affair. I'm honestly curious who blinked first. Is this a deal that Charlie and his attorneys approached the state with, or did the state just kind of throw in the towel prior to the DFS regulations? There's all there's all these little moving pieces that make it really curious as to make me really curious as to how all this actually came to come about.
They are calling the plea deal a good deal for his lawyer, but when I see the 60 months in jail, I'm not so sure. Victoria.
Yeah, I'd have to know a bit more about what's going on behind the scenes with Charlie, not just from these, top level reporting. I'm not surprised that this is happening. Back to Blake's comment, while it's not measurable and the illicit drug trade, it's still illegal. So I don't know. I feel bad for Charlie. I think hopefully he can just pay the money and walk away from this. I think it's awesome he still wants to work in Bitcoin. That says a lot.
And remember, you can work in Bitcoin anywhere, not necessarily in the U.S. Megan Lords.
So this was, seems like a kind of, I wouldn't say it's a bad decision because I think his hands were tied in this. I saw some people kind of giving him some shit about it, like, oh, you should fight it, you should fight it. And I think it comes down to he obviously knows what he's up against better than everyone else, so I'm not going to fault him for taking a plea deal at all because he's more familiar with the circumstances. And the other charges he's facing in regards to money laundering, the structuring charges, something that they will go after you for. And it's the most ridiculous thing. Structuring is when you try to avoid it's suspicious activity, or you're trying to avoid a cash transaction report where you're doing multiple low-level transactions below a $10,000. Well, here's $10,000. It may be different elsewhere, but it's something that they're going to go after you for to make an example out of you anyway. And I think the Silk Road charges are a lot more serious, and he could have been facing a lot more serious jail time. So I think it's unfortunate that he got caught, and I think it's unfortunate that he's being put in this situation for things that haven't hurt anybody at all and have not, there's no one that was harmed in these transactions whatsoever. He just happened to break the wrong rules. I hope that this can be resolved more financially and that he won't have to spend any time in jail. But we'll see. I definitely wish him the best of luck, and I'm happy to see his enthusiasm still, and he's still very active in Bitcoin and plans to continue being active in Bitcoin. So I think that's really inspiring, considering everything he's gone through, and continuing to have, at least it appears to be, a fairly positive outlook.
And the American legal system really is built on plea bargaining. So many times it's a much better deal to accept the plea than to risk going to trial. And I'm sure that's what his attorney said. Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, so plea bargaining is hugely popular. Apparently, from 1984 to 2001, how common it was for people to take a plea bargain. In the United States, it rose from 84% of federal cases to 94% over just a few years. And back in 2013, there was a study done by Human Rights Watch that said that the Justice Department is regularly coercing defendants in federal drug cases to plead guilty by threatening them with steep prison sentences. They found that people who did not take the plea deal received prison sentences on average 11 years longer than those who pled guilty. So there really is a lot of pressure behind people get to basically circumvent the court system and to push some kind of punishment upon these people that are going after. They don't want to actually have to prove themselves in a court of law. What they want to do is they want to make it so that there's a chance that they will possibly prove themselves. They'll throw a lot of accusations at you, hoping that one of them sticks, and they threaten you so that if any of them happens to stick, that you get very severely punished if you allow it to go to court, and so you always end up taking the plea deal. And this is just a way of circumventing the supposed rule of law that we have in the United States. Here's something that Charlie wrote to a mailing list 6 days ago about the plea deal. He said, in a federal case, only the judge decides my sentence. Originally, if I had lost the trial, I could face 30 years from 3 charges, including money laundering, which is a biggie. I pled to a much smaller charge, which is sort of an aiding and abetting crime. It's still a felony, of course. And he's expecting some probation, but it's going to be better than the house arrest that he's been under so far. So I guess he's, as of 6 days ago, he's not expecting that he's going to do additional jail time, just some more probation. Of course, he will be a felon. Now, in the future, and I don't think this is even going to be in the distant future, this may even happen within Charlie's lifetime, people will be 100% clear that what Charlie Shrem did was completely morally acceptable, that there was not a shred of evil or misdeed in what he has done with BitInstant and in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And we will understand that he has been a political prisoner, that he has been persecuted by a government who is opposed to cryptocurrencies because it threatens their tax base, their control on the population, their ability to collect taxes, extort taxes from the population that they have control over. And it's not going to be long until this is pretty clear to the majority of the population. But unfortunately, Charlie happened to be born at a time and in an age of Bitcoin where this is not still well understood by people. People don't understand that money laundering is a made-up crime that excludes the government and all of their cronies from this behavior, and basically boils down to, well, you're moving money. We didn't give you permission to move this money, and we don't like it. So here's some jail time for it. And it's a real shame. It's really disappointing to see this kind of stuff happening. It's disappointing to see $950,000 taken out of the Bitcoin ecosystem, divested from Bitcoin startups, and put towards the government war chest instead. That's a great unfortunate event as well, because Charlie's an excellent entrepreneur, and I'm sure he could put that money to much better use. So it's unfortunate news, and I guess the best that I can hope out of this circumstance is that he pays the fee, he gets the probation, then he moves on, and this is the end of this story.
And if I could jump in and comment really quick, one of my best friends is a libertarian attorney. We share an office space together, and so I talk with him a lot. And we talked a lot about the Kokesh case and about other cases, about the Albrecht case. And he's the type of attorney that people always are telling him, why don't you do more plea deals? And he doesn't like to do plea deals because he likes to go to court and fight. He actually goes to court more than any other lawyer that I've ever heard of. But when it comes to a federal case and you don't have the right to a trial by jury and/or there's different considerations relative to what the jury instructions are and things like that, someone who almost always says go and gut it out and fight it out he will say, don't get the eye of Sauron, the federal government, to look at you, because just as Christoph was pointing out, the number of times when they will just load on you all of these charges to scare you. I mean, there's two things happening. They want to scare you, and then they also want to show everybody else that you should be scared and that they will follow through, because the justice system is not well funded enough to actually try all of these people appropriately and fairly. So there's a motivation for the state to do things even beyond what you would think that they would want, which would just be the money, which they want that too. And it's a really dangerous situation, and my heart goes out to Charlie.
There's long been a theme amongst protesters that if they could just get everyone involved in the war on drugs to take their cases to trial, that it would back up the system hopelessly, and they would have no choice but to change these obviously unfair laws. I'm not sure it's gotten to that point. The threaten and plea system seems to work pretty well for them.
But the question is, who wants to be at the front of the queue? Who wants to be the first few cases that are not going to get backed up and that are going to end up in prison for 20 years? No one wants to be at the front of that line, and so it's not happening, right?
Well, actually, hi. This is a very personal topic for me. I believe in it very strongly, to the point where I've, quite frankly, on the line with Razor Road and distributed deep web marketplaces. We are quite literally developing, Tor-based marketplaces to allow people to circumvent economic censorship on a federal level. And a lot of people have said, they're going to come and get you for doing this. And I'm looking forward to it, because it will provide the opportunity to open up the dialogue with the federal government in a court of law and really begin to set down to educate them as far as what this technology is and the implications that it could have. I'm just writing software. I'm not telling anybody to do anything with it. So it's like bringing Linus Torvalds to court for making Linux. And we literally are going to challenge these existing regulations with software development in order to get someone to come and drag us into a court. I mean, and quite frankly, if nobody does, we're just going to keep going because nobody cares. And then we win anyway, so it all works.
And if the software is open sourced, people could pick it up and continue working on it even while you or even your group was in court. So
that's correct.
Like what they're fighting against here, how bad it gets, how quickly it gets. Because look at Ethereum. Vitalik Buterin is one super smart 19-year-old or whatever. All we need is 5 of those: 3 in India, 2 in Russia, 1 in China. A variety of people all over that share the same ideas, can all read the same code and work together, and this thing's over. We'll just solve the problem with software. And what are they going to do then?
And if we put it out now, while the we're very heavily incentivized to get this going, because, and OpenBazaar too, we are a fork of their project. And so, we are all very heavily incentivized to get this going before regulation is established, because nobody wants to be the good person responsible for making laws that can't be enforced because things passed beyond them. So there is an absolute concerted development effort on the behalf of cryptocurrency developers to make these regulation discussions going on now absolutely irrelevant.
And as we saw in the proposed New York regulations, Satoshi Nakamoto would have had to register his invention of Bitcoin with the New York DYF or DFS before he could have engaged in Bitcoin. So it clearly makes no sense. They want all the altcoin people to register. It's just not going to happen. I have no idea.
Right, but to be clear, I think that Charlie Shrem's case is clearly in a separate category from, for example, the developers of OpenBazaar. There isn't much precedent for programmers being arrested. There was this the stuff in the crypto wars where they were trying to go after them for exporting munitions without permission and whatnot, but that was shot down. So the general precedent is that programmers can't be gone after for this type of stuff. But Charlie ran a company that had a money service business license. He was a money service business by any stretch of the imagination as far as the law is concerned. And so there's it would not make much sense, in my opinion, for him to try and take some kind of stand in court. I don't think he would have much basis to make a stand. I think he would just end up in jail and spend more money on lawyers and all that stuff. So good for him for trying to find a way to move on from the situation.
Well, and to respond, there actually is precedent for the attempted prosecution of developers who make Bitcoin-related and cryptocurrency-related software. The state of New Jersey, their attorney general, actually arrested someone for a proof of concept Bitcoin mining app, and it was a subpoena, excuse me, because the mining app was something what was basically cloud mining on people's computers. And the state attorney general overreacted, and I think when it comes to that sort of thing, that's kind of what we're expecting. Is not that it is going to be any sort of rational reaction to this technology. It's going to be completely irrational, and that's what we're looking to highlight because it's just silly.
I believe they were concerned that the browser-based cloud mining app would become a virus or something run in the background on web pages. It was an MIT-type project, but yeah, I do recall that was very much an overreaction. And
it is speculation on how the software was going to be employed, not on the developer, not on what the software was actually designed for, but speculation on how the software was going to be deployed, and that's really the scary part.
I just hope that nobody makes a command where you could copy files, where you could say copy this file to that file, because that'll destroy everything. Moving on to the exit question. The Ross Ulbricht, the alleged Dread Pirate Roberts trial is scheduled to begin on November 3rd. Yes or no, will we see a plea bargain? Blake Anderson.
Well, this is definitely an issue that hits really close to home for me. Ross's mother and I are pretty good friends, so from a parent to a parent when we talk about this issue, and she basically tells me about her child, her baby, that she loved being in a cage. It really hits home, and one of the things that she told me is that when she went to go visit him in prison, that he almost cried seeing her red sweater, and he said that he forgot what red looked like. So it's a very, very horrifying situation, and if he does plea, I would, be very understanding. But I, hope that he doesn't, and that the state cannot make a case, because I feel that they have no evidence that doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment, and I just, wish him all the best.
Bryce.
Well, you know what? I don't know Ross or his family, but I feel very strongly about the issues, and I hope that Ross makes a decision that's best for him. And I would like to think that the stuff that we're doing right now eases his mind as far as the political stance that needs to be taken. So, we'll pick up the banner, we'll keep going, and I just hope that Ross makes a decision that works out best for him. I think we've got this one in hand.
Victoria.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I sure hope we see this, and I hope he takes it. But I feel like they're going to use him as an example to scare other people. I mean, it seems like a lot of the law is about scaring people into behaving, and I don't think this is obviously any different. Even 60 months left with Charlie Shrem. This guy, this is how I learned about Bitcoin, through reading about Silk Road, right? It's how everyone knows about Bitcoin, really, who I've spoken to, right? So I think the U.S. government may use him as an example just to scare the heck out of people to keep them out of Bitcoin, but I really hope not. I'm optimistic, but I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Megan.
Well, according to this CoinDesk article that just came out today, he's going to plead not guilty to the new charges that have been added to his case. If you're not aware of this, they added a bunch of extra charges to try to intimidate him. And here's a quote from his attorney, Joshua Dreidel. These additional charges simply demonstrate the government's penchant for converting a single alleged course of conduct into a set of multiple similar interchangeable charges. And Lynn's talked about that a lot, his mother. What they're doing is they're basically playing word games, and that's a lot of what law is. A lot of it is just changing definitions, whereas, you know, the government's definition of something is going to be a lot broader and a lot overreaching than your average person's definition of what something should be. And that's really the scary part about this, is not only will it set a huge precedent one way or another, but they just added all of these new charges recently, and he was already facing a kingpin charge and all of these other very serious charges that, if found guilty, he would be facing decades in jail for. So it's really terrifying to see this play out, and they are very much trying to make an example out of him. But it looks like he's going to fight it, and this is something that Lynn was saying a couple months ago, and I was talking to her, that they were wanting to plead not guilty and really fight it, because they believe that their evidence will stand up in court, and I surely hope that it does. I think it's really difficult, though, to call the outcome of this, because they are intent on crushing this person. It's really disgusting. It's horrifying how much they're really trying to crack down on this one person. I mean, this is obviously not going to be a fair trial. I think that's really the problem you have when you're versing a plea deal versus going to trial. Either way, you're losing. The plea deal, they're just extorting, you know, maybe less time and money out of you. But if you go to trial, you're working within a system that is meant to basically benefit the state and not you. And as far as Blake mentioned something about funding earlier, I don't know if it's a matter of funding that's the problem. I think it's a systemic problem. I think it's something that's you know, a lot deeper. And I know Blake wasn't trying to say that was just, you know, the only thing. It was a funding thing. But yeah, I mean, you're literally in these situations where you're going to be made an example out of, and it's very difficult to fight back in any using the system that's available to us. So I wish him the best of luck. You know, Lynn is a wonderful person, and what they're going through is just an absolute nightmare. So please support them. You know, the Free Ross Fund is still out there, and you know, definitely support them and look into the other people who they're trying to make examples of too. So I mean, if he does end up fighting and sticking with it, I think that's a very honorable thing to do.
Christoph, Atlas.
I think that it's pretty unlikely that he would be offered any kind of significant plea deal. There's not a whole lot of difference between 50 years in prison and life in prison. And I think he's going to be made an example of, which is unfortunate, because really what they're going to accomplish is not dissuading other people from starting versions, split-offs of the Silk Road. They're just going to encourage people to decentralize their marketplaces further, as Bryce and, you know, the Open Bazaar guys have been working on. So it's not going to have any kind of consequence in terms of justice or a drug trade or anything along those lines. I think that unfortunately I don't see much hope for Ross not spending a good deal of time in prison.
Well, I wanted to jump in really quick and to say, I mean, jurisdiction is a big issue too. I mean, if they're like, okay, nobody in our jurisdiction can do this again. Well, I mean, it's a whole worldwide technology. It's a worldwide currency. I mean, it's like, okay, you've crushed this in your jurisdiction. So what? There's going to be 100,000 more that pop out outside of your jurisdiction. And I know that's a terrible exaggeration, but like it might as well be. So.
And there's a good argument to be made for the semantics as well. You know, when they shotgun approach these charges, what they'll be able to do in the future is say, well, we got this to work for Charlie Shrem, and here's a case that's kind of sort of similar to that, so then they can begin to continue to expand this legal argument for prosecuting people for exchanging these currencies one to another. And you know, if you want to talk about the scariest consequences from all of this, that's it. And you know, I'm not sure what's going to be able to stop that, except for, you know, either a lot of money for legal teams or, you know, the big scary R word, regulation, so that it stops this encroachment of these you know, just ridiculous shotgun approach to trying to make us criminals.
Christoph and Victoria are correct. No plea deal will be offered, therefore no plea deal will be accepted. Moving on. Issue 2. CheapAir is now accepting Dogecoin and Litecoin. With most altcoins in a severe decline, does this even mean anything? Or is this just a cheap attempt by CheapAir to garner some cheap publicity? Bryce Wiener.
Well, from an economic standpoint, you're right. The one thing that all coins do over time, including Bitcoin actually, since the pump in November, is decline over time. This is part of the natural hype cycle of emerging technologies, independent of just cryptocurrencies. So what CheapAir is doing is providing a major outlet for currencies with decent volume and very decent market acceptance to be able to cash in on their own popularity, quite frankly, and increase that transaction velocity. Transaction velocity translates into higher trading volume, which translates into a higher market price. So anytime a major retailer, especially I buy all my plane tickets with CheapAir, so with Bitcoin, and the ability, the acceptance of these altcoins right alongside Bitcoin for major purchase like this, like air travel, I think it's a huge deal. I think it's good for all of the coins, for both of those coins.
Victoria Van Ick.
Yeah, I think it's publicity. I don't think it's bad. Since I've gotten involved in Bitcoin, I've always heard, maybe from the people that I've been historically speaking to, that Litecoin would be added to ATMs, Litecoin would be accepted by merchants. It was just this, as I say, silver to the gold. And my question is, will it actually be used? Will people be using Litecoin? I think very minimal transactions will actually occur in Litecoin and Dogecoin. But yeah, I don't see a downside to this. It could be cheap publicity, but I don't see it as bad. Why not accept as much? Why not accept more money in more forms, right? So, yeah, that's my point of view.
Hustler magazine did famously accept Dogecoin and Litecoin and actually have a lot of sales through it. Megan Lords.
Yeah, I think it's good for Litecoin and Dogecoin. I was cracking up at that headline, though, when I realized it was Forbes, because it's wait a second, since when has Forbes ever been, big on altcoins and seemingly knowledgeable about Bitcoin in any way other than the couple writers who were very knowledgeable on the staff there. But I found it to be such a strange headline. I just have to say that. Yawn. Who writes Yawn in a headline? Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know, stuff like that bugs me as an editor, especially when it's made out to be kind of oh, Bitcoin so last week or something. It's we're not even on board with Bitcoin yet in a lot of ways. I very much view it as a futuristic thing, and that in the future more people are going to be on board with this kind of treating it as if it's last week's news or something is very strange coming from a source that obviously doesn't get it. Yeah, I think it's good for Litecoin and Dogecoin. I think CheapAir is trying to get some publicity. I think they've seen that they've had good luck with Bitcoin. A lot of people have been, booking their flights using Bitcoin with them, and that's definitely helped them out. So, I don't see why they wouldn't expand those horizons to other coins. I don't really have a whole lot of Litecoin and Dogecoin. I guess I don't pay attention too much to the price of those coins, but I'm sure this is going to be good for them and good for the people who have a lot of Litecoin and Dogecoin that they're wanting to utilize. So yeah.
It did seem more like a Business Insider headline, but then again, like Blake said, the clickbait competition continues. Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, it's for publicity, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I will point out, though, that there's this weird thing about Litecoin now. So it wasn't even that long ago, but it seems so long ago that people were talking about Litecoin as, the silver to Bitcoin's gold or whatever, and then there was some other, was it Feathercoin, some other coin that was going to be the bronze or the copper or whatever, and at that time, there were so few cryptocurrencies and there was so little innovation that it kind of made sense. It's got a larger supply of coins and the transactions are a little bit faster, so why not? And now we have things like dark coin and coins that are pegged to the US dollar and black coin that does all this complicated cryptocurrency mining, balancing stuff, and the level of innovation is so much higher. And yet still, for some reason that just I can't wrap my head around, Litecoin is still the #2 cryptocurrency. Why? Why? What has Litecoin done? Nothing. It's a nothing. It's like a 2-line modification of Bitcoin with a Chinese guy that's got a nice smile. You know, that his picture is attached to each article about Litecoin, and that's what Litecoin is. What else have they done? Nothing, as far as I can tell. So it's just kind of baffling that we have this amazing new technology called cryptocurrencies, and they're this amazing innovation, and that's where the value comes from. And then there's one guy that's like, yeah, I changed the name, so like it'll be the second best, right? Like it just doesn't make any damn sense to me. I don't understand why Litecoin hasn't died already. They need to do something other than just the few little script tweaks. I mean, it's not even like ASIC resistant anymore. There are script miners that are ASICs now. They don't even have that going on for them. What is going on with Litecoin? Someone please explain this to me.
Hey, Charlie Lee's a nice guy. Come on.
I don't know if you really want me to explain it to you because we're going to get into all kinds of trouble. I don't think anybody wants to hear it.
It's my turn.
No one can explain it. Many think that Litecoin is used to move money between exchanges, and other than that, maybe some kind of money laundering by changing coins through this coin to that coin to this coin to that coin. But that's just obscurity. That's not actually security. But no one really knows why Litecoin is so valuable. Moving on, quite a lot is happening.
It's my turn.
Yeah, what do you want to say? Go.
I wanted to say a lot about this. Me and Adam Kokesh had a public disagreement about Litecoin versus Bitcoin quite a while ago. Adam was saying a lot that Bitcoin was MySpace and that Litecoin was Facebook. And so we started to get down to the semantics of the differences with the script and SHA-256 and ASICs and ASIC resistance. And oh my God, I received so much hate mail from people saying that I didn't understand what was going on and that I didn't understand ASIC-proof things. Well, from a computer and information science perspective, making an ASIC-proof anything is kind of asinine. I mean, yes, script is a more memory-intensive language than Bitcoin, so it's, it was harder to figure out. But now I think, like 25% of the hashing power for Litecoin is in like one room somewhere in Asia. And Charles Lee is a really nice guy. If you go and talk to him about it, like he will be the first to tell you all of this. He's not dishonest about it at all. But I agree with Christoph in that it's really not the same thing. But as far as it being accepted through various different institutions and companies that want to accept it, I think that that's a good thing because it provides kind of an outlet to be able to spend it directly for people that are still holding on to it. And then maybe it will be knocked down or be less talked about relative to things like that. So those are my 2 cents about Litecoin. I think it was great that it was invented so early on, but it is kind of bizarre that given all the new feature sets that have come out in the space that it has maintained its value.
It's because it's the silver to Bitcoin's gold. Come on, get with it. It's a marketing slogan and it works. Quite a lot is happening over at the World Crypto Network, where you can join and help decentralize the world by spreading the blockchain, host your own show, or be a co-host. Work behind the scenes and join our solutions-oriented team. Join us today at worldcryptonetwork.com. Issue 3. Vox allows reporter to buy bitcoins, then changes their mind. In a bizarre attempt to maintain impartiality, Vox, who allows their reporters to own both dollars and houses while reporting on both, will not allow their Bitcoin reporter to hold Bitcoin while reporting on Bitcoin. The message to Bitcoin reporters and employees of Vox.com is clear. Quit your jobs! Victoria, what's your thoughts on holding Bitcoin while reporting on it?
I hold Bitcoin and I report on it. I mean, I did a 180. I think it's ridiculous that they're telling these people what they can and cannot buy. I'm sorry, that's just crazy. They're obviously not educated on, they're obviously not educated on this. They're looking at it like, okay, if you're holding GE stock and you're reporting on GE, it looks like you're an insider trader or something. It's just ludicrous. I can't believe this is an issue. Like, I'm just, once again, not surprised. Some people, but
And
I don't know this.
Clearly, the power of Vox.com to move the entire market is so incredible. We must protect against this.
Exactly.
It's like when Sexia got all those gigahash. Vox has all our gigahash. We have to protect them. Megan, Lords, your thoughts?
So I'm sipping on the headline Haterade today, and that headline is killing me. It makes it sound like they recommended Bitcoin as an investment, but just generally speaking, instead of what the article actually says, which is that they forced one of their reporters to sell the Bitcoins that he was allowed to buy last week. So I mean, it's unfortunate for him. Like, I would be pissed if I was working somewhere they told me I had to sell my Bitcoins. I have Bitcoin. I report on Bitcoin. Granted, I describe myself as more of a propagandist than a reporter, but still, it's it's something that is kind of ridiculous. And like Victoria said, I don't know who's going to Vox for, who views them as this, great pinnacle of information or anything. So I thought the headline was completely misleading. I think it was a poor decision on their part, and maybe the writers can quit and come over to Bitcoin Magazine or Bitcoin.bombs or someplace where they will pay you in Bitcoin to write articles. So it doesn't seem very fair. I don't know if it was really what they said. Yeah, I want to accept them at face value that it was about impartiality, but I don't know. I find that kind of ridiculous considering what Thomas said, which is they allow you to hold cash and houses while reporting on those. So I mean, I don't know, this whole journalistic ethics, though, in general, it has gotten to be such a strange environment. It used to be, you used to have standards for things, and you used to, impartiality is something that is definitely a good thing, but yeah, you can't be impartial in all things. This whole idea that you can be objective about every single thing is ridiculous. Everyone's biased in their own way, and let the readers decide. Do the research and put it out there, and do the hard work and allow people to make up their own minds. Unfortunately, everything's been so watered down in general. I'm just going to go on a journalistic rant in general here. Everything has just been so watered down. The quality of reporting has gotten so atrocious. It's impossible to try to find any information now without going through a million clickbait headlines. It drives me crazy as someone who actually likes to write and cares about quality. So I hope they get their shit together and realize that this is a bad decision and how conflicting it is. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
And I was reminded of Danny DeVito's great quote from the David Mamet movie Heist. He says, "Everyone wants money. That's why they call it money." Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, so I can kind of understand this concern about journalistic ethics for an article where you're talking about how the price can go way up, which could potentially have some kind of impact on the price. Not much of one. I've never heard of Vox.com before we talked about this story, but I get the basic idea. But it's interesting to me the priorities that they make in terms of journalistic ethics. So the American media leading up to the Iraq War were like, rah, 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 let's go get them, boys. Yeah, they've got these weapons of mass destruction, and then afterwards it was just like, we didn't do good there. Sorry, guys. That was the degree of their apology or taking responsibility for basically acting like a hand puppet for the state, which is basically what every significant publication these days does. Look at the article that we were talking about with Charlie Shrem's case. Oh, it was money laundering. He's pled guilty, so he must be guilty, and we're going to just plead ignorance to the fact that people plead guilty regardless of their innocence, right? They didn't mention that once in the article that he would be led to plead guilty regardless of his innocence. It's just like, oh, well, here's what he did, here's what he's fessing up to, and here's the state's assessment of it, and those are the facts of the matter. I think these priorities are rather messed up. I think that, for the most part, the mainstream media is nothing much more than a fourth branch of the government. They've been often compared to parrots on the shoulders of pirates, which I think is an apt analogy. And So, to me, this is concerning themselves with trivial little details while ignoring the really important stuff.
And again, it's great that they're trying to be impartial, but they would put out a headline like this: "We made the wrong call on buying Bitcoins." Wait a minute. Who's we, the magazine? It doesn't say we made the wrong call on our reporters buying Bitcoin. It's a completely misleading headline. No idea what's going on here. Blake Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the worst headline that could have possibly been chosen for this article, and I don't mean that as hyperbole. It is literally the pinnacle. Any change of this headline would represent positive progress, because you have basically two scenarios that can happen. People that read this that don't go through and read the whole article, that assume, oh, okay, well, Vox is bearish on Bitcoin. We'll delete that news feed and completely, we'll never visit it again. Or there's people that are really going to take it seriously and maybe not read the entire thing and say, oh, well, okay, well, I won't buy Bitcoin ever again. When really what they're saying is that they are trying to, if you read the article, make it so that there's no conflict of interest with people that are using Bitcoin. But this, is illustrating a lack of understanding of what Bitcoin is, because you don't want to be, like we said before, owning GE stock and then reporting about how great GE is, and then if something bad happens, not reporting on that. But Bitcoin is not just an investment. It is a medium of exchange. It's the most saleable good that's ever come about. So if you have, here's the dollar, and then here's, derivatives and markets and then companies and all that stuff that flows down from that naturally, Bitcoin is at the top of another separate pyramid that has that whole thing. So you would never say, you can't own the Yuan and then, post or write about, Asian politics or China and stuff like that. It would be asinine. So there's so many different things that are wrong with this article that it really, really makes me doubt the basic ability of Vox to perform in this space. And I really don't like to look at people from a lens of, let me see what you've done wrong and then use that one little criticism to try to blow away all your credibility. But this is such a massive, massive, massive error that I think that Vox should actually write an apology or a correction or something, and I think that if they don't, that we should probably not, read their stuff a whole lot anymore. It's that bad.
Well,
what would be crazy is if there was some currency out there that was just propped up on violence and stealing from people and wars and whatnot, and then all of the journalists out there would just present this organization's their information as pure fact. That would really be and if they were getting paid in this currency at the same time, that would really be a significant conflict of interest, I would say.
It'd be like deep capture almost. But where have I heard that word before? Oh, Patrick Byrne has talked about the deep capture, not just capturing a regulatory body, but all the way down to journalism. And you're right, Christoph, the dollar has really created institutions that have captured regulators, captured what's going on, captured politicians, all the way down to the mouthpieces of what we should or shouldn't believe. And it's it's hypocritical for them to be like, oh, well, we're going to be completely non-biased. And I mean, I hate to jump back into a full rant mode here, but a bias is something that you have to expose and own up front. You can't just have certain little pieces of well, my bias is exposed here through these semantical pieces of information, then I can write whatever I want. I mean, you have to expose and own your bias. Objectivity is not something that is possible, and to pretend that it is, like they did, is just another giant red flag for this publication, in my opinion.
I think this guy should just write a series of articles about how he can't buy Bitcoin now, because clearly he's exposed that he wants to buy it. He even did buy it, and now they're making him sell it. So this guy's whole existence is now how much Bitcoin I had to sell because I worked at this crap magazine. It's like someone comes to you in the future and they're like, let me tell you about the future. One word: plastics. And then your boss is like, you can't invest in plastics. You can cover it all the time. You can read about how great they are, how it's going to change the world, but you're not going to be a part of that. Boy, that sounds like a really good deal. I would stay working there. Bryce Wiener.
Well, I'm very critical about, and I'm all with some of the earlier comments. I have been a long time basher of the absolute Bitcoin propaganda machine that comes out and beats us over the head with all of this nonsense every time something good or bad happens with Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. The propaganda machine starts cranking out all these blog posts, and CoinDesk kicks into overdrive, and everything starts going, and the drum beat goes, and I'm just like, oh, I'm getting a headache. some of the, I think, I'm all about regulation these days, and I have the strong opinion that people don't want regulation in this space because they're going to have to shut up. And then they're going to have to be held responsible for the things that they say in regard to the actual use cases, in regard to the technology, in regard to the actual market prices that these coins, that these currencies will generate. John Matonis, there was this big thing recently about the Bitcoin being shorted in the markets and the price going down, and everybody went, oh, traders are destroying our coin price. And John Matonis, a very visible, very public figure for the Bitcoin Foundation, comes out and says, Bitcoin, not good for trading. It's too illiquid. Don't do it. 24 hours later, Wedbush Securities releases a report that says the #1, very first killer app for Bitcoin is trading. What? That kind of app, and Wedbush is a member of the Bitcoin Foundation. So on one hand, we have members of the board saying Bitcoin is no good for trading, please don't do it because you're destroying the market price. And then we have actual people who are financiers, who are institutional investors in securities, saying that the greatest, the first killer app of Bitcoin is trading. This sort of mixing of the message, definitely a result of the distributed autonomous corporation aspect of Bitcoin. However, there's so much hype that goes on, and I have a real problem with, the P.T. Barnum sort of methodology that goes along with trying to get more suckers involved in Bitcoin, because in the long term, everything will be forgiven because we're going to change the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I take great issue with that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you're trying to rail against this ends justifies the means thing, and I agree with that. But when you say regulation, do you mean regulation in that people can say whatever they want about Bitcoin right now because it's not a group or individual that can sue for libel or slander? Or what do you mean more when you say regulation? Because that's such a dirty word sometimes in this space. I want to get more.
Straight up, you see the Chiron, CEO of Block Tech Financial. All I do all day long is trade coins, make coins, come up with new ways to trade coins, and create new financial tools. So I have a very active Twitter feed with all kinds of people on it, media, traders, all kinds of stuff. So when I say something about a coin, the price moves. People make a decision on whether or not to invest in that coin or not based upon the things that I say. So I have to be very careful to not trade against my own discussions, because someday the SEC is going to come and ask me, well, you said this in public, and then you made this trade on this exchange over here and profited $50,000 from your own words. I mean, Carl Icahn just had to pay a massive amount of fines for doing exactly the same thing. He pumped his own stocks and then dumped them at the high.
So you would say that the statement that reputation systems coming back as a result of this decentralized technology will not be enough to push people like that out of the space, and that we want to see regulation, preferably healthy regulation, that stops people from being hypocritical in their own statements to try to make money off of swings?
Based upon the actual disbursement rate of the coins held in the top 100's wallets of Bitcoin, it would take about 20 to 30 years for Bitcoin whales to no longer be an issue. I mean, let's just stop and consider that for a moment, that all of these coins are held in a very centralized group of people who have all joined the Bitcoin Foundation. So now they have this enormous propaganda organ by which they can present their own message to support their own investment while still being able to claim that it's decentralized and it's everybody just so, but come on, there are billions of dollars at stake. I don't
Why
think
does that matter?
I'm sorry?
Why does it matter who holds the coins?
Oh, in my opinion, it doesn't. I mean, I'm an altcoin guy. If I don't like what Bitcoin's doing, I'll go make another network and we can compete. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the message that's being presented, that it leads to decentralization and this, that, and the other thing, well, decentralization is only up until a certain point, until you start to dig down into the details of it, and then centralization simply starts to take on other forms. And the decentralization in Bitcoin is in the blockchain technology and in the open source nature of the source code, not in the actual network itself.
Yeah, we're talking
do you
capital
think-
B decentralization, not lowercase b decentralization here.
Correct.
I think that was what Christoph was meaning was, well, you know, the Bitcoin unit of account centralization has nothing to do with the network centralization. Is that what you meant, Christoph?
Right.
Well, my argument is in the longer chain of analysis, I don't think it matters. You know, if we're talking about a group of centralized individuals, a group of individuals who are able to control the price of a major liquid asset on global markets, what's the difference? The difference is simply government backing, or it's a collusion of a cartel. But you know, why? And I said this recently in another interview. Let's not replace the old assholes with new ones.
Good quote. And I think we're moving on. Issue 4. Chamber of Digital Commerce receives donation from Overstoc. The CDC. No, not the Center for Disease Control, which is currently on the front pages every day fighting a possible Ebola outbreak. But the other CDC, the Center for Digital Commerce, made big news this week, collecting the first donation from Overstock's Promote the Future Adoption of Digital Currency Fund. The CDC, famously run by DCite Perianne Boring, has the goal of promoting Bitcoin in Washington, D.C., i.e. to promote Bitcoin to regulators. Is this really the best way to spend Overstock's money? Megan Lords.
No, because while I'm sure the intentions are pure with the CDC, I don't think they've been around long enough for us to see the results of their activism and educating regulators and all of that. I definitely get the goals of the group. I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I don't think this is the best source, to really be donating to, because they just haven't really been around long enough. They haven't proven that they've been able to stave off any of these really, really bad regulations that have been proposed, and I think they need more time to prove themselves in the space. I think it's a little early to judge the outcome of their actions. And I mean, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of supporting anything that has to do with reaching to regulators or any kind of DC-based group. I don't find I find the closeness to that space to be a little bit concerning. Like I said, I'm sure they have the best of intentions with talking to regulators, but I just don't trust that they're going to be able to do that. And if we're worried about, the regulators not being educated enough so that they can properly regulate us, that's just not a concern for me. I want to see other people educated about it who aren't regulators. I don't care about getting Bitcoin into the hands of politicians and regulators. Those are the last people I want to use Bitcoin or even be involved in it at all. But that's my personal view. I do wish them the best of luck in staving off these regulations. But yeah, I don't know that it's the best choice for Overstock. We'll see.
Christoph, Atlas.
Now, I have to say I'm pretty disappointed with Overstock on this. I don't even care about the track record of these particular lobbyists, and that's what they are. They're lobbyists. They're not educators. I think this whole argument that they're going to educate regulators and legislators and so forth is pretty disingenuous. Maybe that's a good tactical move on their part to lie about what their intentions are. I don't know, but it's pretty disingenuous. The idea that somehow the dollar and Bitcoin are going to happily coexist, and that these regulations that are coming along, the opposition of the state to Bitcoin is just it's a simple misunderstanding. They just don't understand the technology. It's just also new for them. Like they're a bunch of hapless, innocent children. It is completely farcical. That's a crazy view of the world. The people who are opposing Bitcoin now, they understand the technology just fine. What they understand fundamentally about it is that it is eating away at the institution that gives them power, that they've put all of their resources, all of their life's work into, that they hope to preserve in the future for the legacy of their evil little children that they're raising. And that's what they need to understand about Bitcoin. They don't need to know about how the blockchain works or any of this other stuff. So I think it's money wasted. I think the regulators are not people who we try to educate or who we try to negotiate with. I don't negotiate with regulators. I try to design around them. I try to route around them. I think this is how the internet in general deals with censorship, is that it routes around it. And Bitcoin is the internet of money, and I think that's exactly how we should be trying to deal with the situation, rather than spending precious dollars, talking and interacting with regulators and legislators.
Blake Anderson.
Well, I want to try to see positivity here. I mean, nobody's a fan of people that are trying to take over other people's lives and do things that are well beyond the bounds of what people should be doing. But I think that I actually agree with Overstoc and with Patrick giving these people money, because hopefully where that money will go is to help for plane tickets and hotel stays for people to go to DC and talk to various different people that are, in charge. Not for them to understand the technology behind Bitcoin, because at the risk of sounding offensive, they're not going to really get it. But hopefully, at a macro level, Satoshi figured out how to do something amazing. He wrote this software that interfaces with computers and with networking, and that also interfaces with humanity and culture, and it works basically just as well with one as it does the other. So if we can go and get these politicians to own Bitcoin themselves, and then they have a vested interest materially in the technology, what that can do in a best case scenario is make it so that when these really untenable larger regulations come up, they will get a lack of support on an individual level from everybody else below it. So Bitcoin is very, very, very sneaky in that regard, in that it can undermine collective decisions with individual motivations. And if we can go and get people on Capitol Hill to actually own Bitcoin, they will have a very, very solid disinterest in doing really, really stupid things to harm the network. So hopefully the money will go to this, infant organization, and they will spend it well, and hopefully they'll spend it on getting people that really, really are good at, either giving Bitcoin to these people or getting them materially invested, and then hopefully they will want their investment in Bitcoin to go up, and they won't regulate it like clowns. And
but Blake, as a project manager, would you, if someone came to you and they're like, I want a big bucket of money, and I'm never going to be able to tell you what the effects of my actions are. I'm never going to be able to demonstrate any kind of positive consequences of my actions. They're all going to be immaterial, but I guarantee you that it's going to have some intangible positive effect. What would you say to them as a project manager?
Well, I mean, I would look at how much money it is. I think it's about $12,000 if we had to guess about how much they're getting, and that's not a ton of money for the amount that Overstoc is getting in. But you're right. In the situation that you told me, I'd be like, absolutely not. Let's get a project baseline and have a report that you're going to bring back, and let's make sure that you're not, going out to the strip clubs and blowing money, and or using the money, worst case scenario, to go talk to a politician about how to regulate this the best and how to make it so that your constituents or whatever feel like you were the one that came up and made the rule that killed Bitcoin. So I think that there are definitely dangers, but I think that the silver lining would hopefully be in the vein of kind of what I talked about.
Remember that one of the beautiful things about lobbying is that, like advertising, you don't have to show any results. You put the message out there, like maybe for all we know they're working on a special version of Sesame Street just for the congressmen to teach them about Bitcoin, because Muppets work. And if that's successful, it's successful. If it's not successful, they got paid anyway. Good deal. Bryce Wiener, your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of the odd man out here. I'm a business guy, and I'm coming at it from the perspective of perhaps what Overstoc was coming at it. I met Perry Ann in Carolina at Cryptolina, and she and I sat down and discussed her plans for the CDC, and I gotta say that we're considering joining. As a business in the space that is, quite frankly, made a statement of taking on regulators and pushing the envelope as far as regulation occurs, being part of a lobbying organization in D.C. Is only in our own self-interest. And I think that Overstoc electing to join the CDC as opposed to the Bitcoin Foundation is a definite vote towards that move. That businesses now want to take over this conversation. So, and I'm obviously an anarcho-capitalist. I'm making deep web marketplaces for profit. So there, this is not like we're going to turn into Morgan Stanley. But by the same token, we still have to make money, and we still have to be productive. And the one thing that government does, and what lobbying does, and what regulation does, and I feel it is something that is needed in this space, is consumer protections to create well-lit paths through the industry so we can keep it relatively unregulated, so we can still accept the fact that any 19-year-old with a computer science, with a background in computer science can fire up $1 million network, that you're not going to be able to regulate it that way. However, if you create the well-lit paths for mom and pop, who right now, quite frankly, don't care how their money works now, they're not going to care how their money works if they're using Bitcoin. So by creating these well-lit paths, you have the option to say these are trusted vendors, these are trusted networks, these are trusted ways of doing business. You can also do it fast and loose if you want to, but you're going to take your chances. You're going to have a higher risk and potentially a higher reward as well. So I want to make it clear that when I talk about regulation and lobbying, it's towards that aspect. I do not feel that this should be regulated into oblivion like some other, emergent things have done, not by any case of the imagination. We just can't. It's impossible to regulate open source technology. All you can do is give things your blessing, that this is something that looks relatively safe to use. And I think that's all that people are really looking for in the end anyway.
That's a good point, Bryce, that Overstoc chose to donate to the CDC, not to the Bitcoin Foundation. I think that's a significant point. Also, when you join, I hope they give you some swag that says CDC on it, maybe a coffee mug or a bright yellow hazmat suit, something like that.
I think their logo is something like an evolved Ebola virus.
It's very timely, very timely. Victoria, your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. When in April of this year, I was called into the Senate in Canada, similar to what you have in the States, with my business partner at the time. And I was not a libertarian at the time. I was kind of like not even knowing what libertarian was or is at that time. I was liberal. Now I'm more towards a libertarian stance, but that's only because I've done a lot of research on Bitcoin and learned that it is political. But at the time I was like, oh yeah, we can go into the Senate, we can teach these guys all about it because they need to know and they're interested. And I don't think we should be hating on Perianne for doing this. Did you guys see her on Max Kaiser? I'm not sure. I think he was a little harsh on her for being like, so you think you're going to go in and talk to these senators or these congressmen, and what are you hoping to achieve with this? And he was a little harsh. I think she does mean well, and I think that a lot of people in the space that are coming into the space aren't libertarian. Like, we're seeing a lot of Wall Street people, recovering bankers, right, who would fund something like this because regulation will happen, and they'd love to get lobbyists going into the government to get regulation in the way they want it, in the way that would profit them. So it's going to happen. Perianne is capitalizing on an opportunity that is a gap that I think was there. I was surprised it took this long, that there was nothing going on in Canada or in the States until now. Bitcoin Strategy Group was originally supposed to be a lobbyist group, and then I started learning more and more about Bitcoin, and I was just like, how are we going to change these people into libertarians? It's not going to happen. So it's a difficult topic for me because I don't think I'm as libertarian or anarcho-capitalist or anarcho-libertarian, I don't even know if I'm using the right words, as you guys are. I think that you're in a different realm, and I'm kind of plodding over and learning more and more to join you, but I think a lot of people who are coming in aren't in that realm, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Is it a good use of money, the donation? Patrick Byrne's money, he gets to pick where it goes. If he sees it as a wise investment, then he sees it as a wise investment. I haven't met Perianne, but she's definitely motivated. She knows about Bitcoin, and if she sees an opportunity to help, I got asked to go back into the Senate. I'm going back in. So I don't want to be hated on by the community. You know, I'd like to hear what the community thinks I could say, but that's my stance on it. I think any effort to help is good, but I can see why people in the community would say, you're negotiating with terrorists. We don't do that. It's a very hardline approach to it. I tend to be more of like the middle side, saying, well, maybe I can go in and teach these guys some stuff, kind of like Perrianne. So I hope you guys don't hate me now.
I think it's very clear we're dividing into two camps. One camp says we should take away all their toys. The other camp says we should negotiate with them while we take away all their toys. Either way, we're taking away all their toys. It's not going to change. The technology's there. So.
Well, if I can go back to what Bryce was saying, it's like it's not going to change anything. They will regulate the way, me going in or Perrianne going in and talking to these people is not going to change a thing at all. Like, they're going to regulate this the way that I think we all know they're going to regulate it. It's and the technology will exist, and if anything, it'll just spur on more innovation in spite of what's going to come about. So I don't think it's going to have an impact. I mean, I really don't. I think in Canada's, when we go back in, we're going to say, it's going to happen. It's happening. Finland, I think, made it legal. So you guys can either fall behind or, stay advanced. But anyway, I'm now ranting. Sorry.
A lot of people thought we should have warned the dinosaurs about that asteroid, but it worked out the same way. Christoph, did you have something to say? No? All right, exit question. If you were Overstoc.com, who would you donate your money to? Megan Lords.
As one of those people who has said I don't negotiate with terrorists in regard to the regulators and the politicians, I have a whole list. I have a whole list of places that I would donate to. And I do want to make it clear, I have the utmost respect for Patrick. I consider his work to be very influential and very great. And it is his money. Ultimately, it's up to him. But Antiwar.com is very close, but falling just short of getting their Bitcoin donations matched by Roger Ver. They desperately need your help, and they have a track record of over 10 years, like 15 years now, I believe, of doing the hardest reporting on foreign policy and all of the overt and covert wars around the entire world. And they're struggling right now, and they really need your help. So at the top of my list, and usually always at the top of my list, is antiwar.com, because of the hard work that they've already put in and the little recognition and help that they seem to get sometimes. I mean, knowing that these things are very crucial. It's very crucial as far as changing people's minds about the political system too. I get into anti-war activism when I was in the left. When I was a very hardcore socialist. But that's something that has always stayed with me, and I think it helped push me more towards libertarianism. And it's definitely changed my view on how I view the people in government. Because at the end of the day, we can use euphemisms for it, but they're stealing our money and killing people with it. And if you want to support something that's completely opposed to that, the complete opposite vein of that, antiwar.com is the place to do it. Their fundraiser is still going. You can still donate, and Roger Ver is going to match those donations. And also, there are a bunch of Bitcoin charities, too. Bitcoin Not Bombs is about to do their Hoodie the Homeless project for the winter. Sean's Outpost is feeding homeless people every single day with Bitcoin. Free Aid has fed helped hundreds of people in the Philippines. They also have a long track record of helping people. I'd say look into some of these charities who have the work already that they've already put in to helping people and have shown the results of that work too. So those are my thoughts on it. Check out antiwar.com, definitely. And full disclosure, while I do work for Bitcoin Not Bombs, I have never been paid by antiwar.com. I am just a huge supporter of what they do, and I really believe in what they do.
Christoph, Atlas.
Yeah, like I said, you route around the politicians and the regulators, and you do that with software development. So I'd be putting those funds into the development of decentralized marketplaces. Decentralized exchanges are still very much needed in the cryptocurrency space. There aren't any that have risen to the top to really, rid us of these GOX-like exchanges that are still unfortunately lingering around. I'd be working on funding voting pools for exchanges and similar types of organizations. I'd be working on cryptographic proof of reserves, all the kind of the stuff, the ecosystem stuff that we need that's not quite there yet because there may not be like. So I was asking a while ago to people, like, why do you think we don't have any great decentralized exchanges yet that are just that work for people? And someone pointed out, like, look, yeah, if you create a decentralized exchange, there's no clear way for you to make money off of it. It's not like a centralized exchange where you get to collect the fees. If it's decentralized, there's no guy that gets to collect the fees, and so there's no clear profit motive behind creating these kinds of exchanges. So I'd be funding projects like that we need, or improving Bitcoin privacy or the privacy of people involved in these marketplaces. I think those would all be things that would hugely benefit the utility of Bitcoin, and that would actually get something useful done.
That's a good point, Christoph, because unlike lobbying or advertising, with software companies, you actually get to keep the software after, especially if it's open source. Blake, your thoughts?
Well, I think that Patrick has been really good at trying to identify what are the weakest points of where Bitcoin connects to legacy systems and how to strengthen those. And I think that some of the biggest hurdles that can be helped are to try to kind of reinvent securities and equities and things that you use Bitcoin 2.0 technology. Like I believe that Robert Dermody of Counterparty is working with Overstoc at this point to try to figure out how to issue cryptographic securities, how to basically reinvent the stock market, because the stock market's totally broken. I don't think that we're going to do it first in the United States because regulations and interacting with the SEC would be a nightmare. But if we can get a system whereby other companies and other countries that are more liberal with their regulations could then end up issuing a crypto security, which would then be able to move us over into making DACs and DAOs, decentralized autonomous corporations and organizations that then really cannot be shut down, and that really will bring us into a future wherein trust is not as big of a deal, where we can expand the trustless system of Bitcoin into other areas and really, really bring the future on with full force. So I actually can't think of a better way for Patrick to donate his money. Aside from, I guess, I think a good step, maybe even before that, would be to help maybe set up a Bitcoin exchange somewhere that is not having thin order books, meaning basically that the owners are trading a lot with bots, and then people come in and then trades are suspended, and then people look at arbitrage advantages and things like that that can be done, and then their trades that are coming in from actual consumers are either put off or never go through. I think that helping to fix that would allow hedge funds dump into Bitcoin without violating their security policies with moving large amounts of money. And I think that that is probably the next thing that needs to happen to engender another big Bitcoin deflationary spiral to push the price up to 10,000 and beyond, and things like that.
I only woke up at the end where he said 10,000 or beyond. What? Bryce Wiener, go ahead.
Oh, Blake, I'm going to make you very happy, man. I might as well just go ahead and say it. I'm actually going to be the first federally regulated altcoin developer. This is voluntary. I'll be taking my Series 65 exam and submitting myself to FINRA regulations. And we'll be developing actual asset-backed networks that fall completely within U.S. regulatory compliance, both with the SEC and FINRA and FinCEN. We've been working on these legal. We've been working on the legal of it all summer. In fact, my FINRA registration is currently in process. Paid all the fees and the paperwork, and I'm going to take the test in a couple weeks. These are the kinds of tools, and I've said this for a long time, and we've developed these. We've got actually 3 different kinds. We're calling them ABNs, asset-backed networks. We've got 3 different kinds of ABNs that we've developed with institutional traders from, well, all up and down the spectrum, from J.P. Morgan on down to, regular investment advisors. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on it, and we're going to start to offer these sorts of tools that are blockchain-based. I don't like Bitcoin 2.0 because this is not Bitcoin. This is the blockchain. And using Bitcoin for these sorts of assets is really the problem, because it is used as a currency. If it, and the example I like to use is if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And you can't use a currency as an asset-backed network and vice versa. But you can do both of those things with a blockchain. So when it comes to Overstoc and where he's putting his money and why, to me, I'm all for it, because he's just when it comes to the SEC is going to come knock on my door, and they're going to come and want all sorts of justifications as to, are we in fact doing this legally? How is this not a hedge fund? How is it like a hedge fund? How is this not a security? And we have to be able to present all of those and express a cogent argument. So when it comes to spending money in the direction of regulation or an education for governments, I'm all for it. I think that's great. I think there should be more of it. I think things like World Crypto Network should be getting more money from people like Overstoc, because they serve as a valid counterbalance to number one, the absolute vacuum of financial reporting on this. $8 billion in the cryptocurrency industry, and nobody reports on it. What the fuck? So, things like World Crypto Network, and my Twitter feed and IRC channels, this is all there is. So if the mainstream media wants to get involved in this and still remain relevant as we're building this entirely new underground financial infrastructure that's decentralized and spans the globe, they should probably wise up and start paying attention to people like you.
See, and that's why I asked that exit question, for a good answer like that. Victoria, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would love to see more people using it. My friends and my family don't use it and are terrified of it because of what they hear. And as I said earlier, I learned about it through a Facebook post on Silk Road. And if I hadn't have dug a little bit deeper or gone to the North American Bitcoin Conference in Miami, I wouldn't be here right now. But most people don't take the time to dig. They don't have the time. They don't want to come home and research things they don't know or are scared of. And people don't talk about money already. So I would like to see money put towards more education or merchant acceptance. If I had everyone in Ottawa accepting Bitcoin, then people would say, oh, I should be using Bitcoin, or what is Bitcoin, So I would love the money to go to something like that, more education, whether it's, channels like this or, I don't know, something where, people can learn more about it and learn it in a comprehensive way, not just the small B that we always hear about in the news, but the big B, which is the most valuable part of Bitcoin. So specific organization, I don't have one off the top of my head, but something like what you and Chris are doing, I think is fantastic. What like MK is doing, Megan, I mean, like, that would be great to put money towards too. It's just about getting the people who are not Bitcoiners in to watch these shows. They don't even know about this, right? So maybe some more promotion on their channels is a good way to use the money. Not quite sure.
And like Bryce said, this is a worldwide phenomenon. People from all over the world are watching these shows, getting involved with the World Crypto Network, making their own shows, doing their own Twitter accounts, and no one needs to give them permission to do any of that. Everyone has the permission right now. I give you the permission. I don't have the right to give it to you, but you have it anyway. It's the Tin Man. It was with you all along, the Scarecrow. So, but yeah, I would like to see the money go to something like that. The World Crypto Network is available. We are doing new shows every day, and we're trying to decentralize the blockchain by spreading it around. We've given I know Chris announced this last week on our town hall meeting, but the first copy of the blockchain has been sent out to Ghana. And what we talked about with this sending out the blockchain is that it's very difficult for countries like this to download the entire blockchain. So if we send a copy in on a USB stick, they can take all day to update the new transactions, and they can do that each day as soon as they have the copy from this USB stick, and we can send it around, we can put it around the country, and pretty soon they'll have a whole bunch of copies of the blockchain there, and they can do business. And I don't know of anyone else that's doing this. If they'd like to join us or have similar initiatives, we'd welcome them aboard. And all of our stuff's pretty much open. We're on the Reddit. We have open meetings on the Google Hangouts, and we're going to do this thing. So Overstoc and others should consider helping us out because funding is tight. But first, some housekeeping. The Bitcoin group would like to send its congratulations to frequent panelist on the show, Andreas Antonopoulos, who has just been promoted at blockchain.info from Chief Security Officer to Board Member. The word on the street is that the CSO values Antonopoulos' advice and wants to keep him close to the top of the stack. We at the group feel exactly the same way and send our congratulations to Mr. Antonopoulos. Keep up the great work. We'd also like to say a sad goodbye to Joan Rivers, a first-class comedian who would say anything to get a laugh. Joan Rivers, 1933 to 2014. Wow, that's a long time. And now, moving on to your questions and our answers. Our first question, let's see. Chris Ellis says, "Hello, friends. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm there in spirit. Rock on." He also says that to Christoph about the altcoins and the Litecoins, he says people get emotionally attached to their altcoin. At first, Litecoin wasn't innovative, but the industry moved so fast to stay relevant. Ultimately, currency choice is good, currency choice is good, and money needs to be safe, not innovative. So he's kind of agreeing with you on the Litecoin, I think. James asks, and this is probably for Bryce, he says, can block tech become in too much danger of holding too much power in alts? Or would you see it as Bitcoin versus alts? Bryce?
I don't really see it that way. I look at it as blockchain technology. And when we look at blockchain technology, Bitcoin is the proof of concept of that. I say often that the primary use case of Bitcoin is to change the world. It's not necessarily to be used as a currency. And that changing the world is a large part of, altcoins, obviously. And wherever Bitcoin goes, we're going to follow in right behind them. And the more the people learn about Bitcoin, the more that businesses will be able to employ blockchain technologies at a significant cost savings over the type of technologies they're currently using. If you want to talk about simply accounting packages that no longer have to have secured servers because now they work on their own secured networks with this publicly available triple entry accounting system, you could start to see how multinationals could save millions of dollars a day by changing to a blockchain to support their infrastructure. I really don't see it as a competition at all.
All right, and we're a little low on questions today, so we're going to go ahead to predictions or story of the week. So if you don't have a prediction, you can go with a story of the week. Blake Anderson, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Well, I guess it's almost kind of in the same vein that I was talking about before about the interest that I have in companies like Counterparty teaming up with people that have a lot of influence, like Overstoc, and trying to reinvent the stock market, trying to actually really get a good framework laid out that may or may not take hold right away, but as stuff starts to collapse and as the instability starts to fall into the net of what exists, I think it would be great to have something there instead of just the pervasive starvation of 1 billion people. That's not something that anybody wants to see or look forward to. So I think that that's a really good project, even if people are like, well, how are you going to make money? How are they going to make money right away? Or where's the instant turnaround in value? Since Overstoc themselves probably isn't going to issue a crypto security anytime soon because the SEC will probably squash that. I think it's nice for people to be working on stuff that's going to collapse, that's going to protect the collapsing system. And like even like a long time ago, we've kind of covered this, but Bitcoin, people are like, well, what's the value proposition? What's the value of Bitcoin? I don't care about the network or anything like that. Well, if you compare it to the US dollar, which is one of the most popular currencies in history, what do we have, like $116 trillion in like unfunded liabilities and in debt and things like that. So let's just say Bitcoin is worth 0 and the dollar's worth negative 116 trillion. That's a $116 trillion value difference for Bitcoin. So I think that the ability of it to catch the collapsing pieces of a dying empire is really important to consider, and to try to really grow the circle of trustlessness as far as we possibly can before stuff really starts to hit the fan. So I'm excited about that.
Looks like we have a couple more questions. We're going to go ahead and pull these up. Joe Rockhead says that he guesses not everyone on the panel feels that government and Bitcoin do not mix. I think we've had some nice diversity of opinions today. It's been good. Spread it out a little. We also have Jay Cyborski asks, Did anyone have any thoughts on Russia being banned from SWIFT? Sorry if you discussed it. I'm not sure what SWIFT is. Are you guys into SWIFT? This is new news to me.
SWIFT is a means of sending money overseas, and cutting Russia out of the SWIFT network essentially means that Russian nationals living and working overseas can't send money home. International corporations looking to do businesses with individuals and corporations inside of Russia can't interact business. And everyone said, ooh, this could be really good for Bitcoin, except the price of Bitcoin did nothing on this announcement because nobody really cares about. I mean, and I hate to say this, but nobody cared. The whole SWIFT announcement had absolutely no impact on Bitcoin whatsoever, not in price or even in the discussions that were going on, or that I'm aware of have been going on as far as ongoing implementation efforts. It's just political posturing, and the infrastructure of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are not up to the point to where when something like this happens, we can simply step in and be a viable alternative. We're just not there yet.
The Russian situation does seem to be continuously deteriorating. Perhaps we should have one of those Olympics things. That really seemed to cheer everybody up. Brought us all together, right? We've got a couple more questions. Here we go. Jay Cyborski says, there's a rumor that the UK was going to lobby the EU to ban transfers. Would they use Bitcoin? Was this rumor from Russian TV news? Thoughts? I think that's about the same story, the SWIFT story. It might just be a continuation. We've also got Chris Ellis likes Blake's point about the dollar being a debt-based currency and Bitcoin being a full reserve asset. So I think you would agree that Bitcoin is at 0, whereas the dollar is at minus whatever we owe on the dollar still.
Hey, Blake, I got a question for you.
Absolutely, my friend. Go for it.
If I go out and buy mortgage-backed securities or CDOs and then use that as a backing asset for a network, is that a debt-backed crypto?
Well, it's hard to know right now because there's so many toxic assets that are floating around. What we tried to do with the 2008 crisis was use all of property and stuff to be a barrier between, default on our currency, and we ended up destroying all property in that process. So I don't know. It's really hard to discover what property is worth right now. And I mean, is it an encumbrance? Is it an asset? Where's the equity in it? Is it? I mean, I guess.
Oh, I'm talking about the CDOs themselves. I mean, after all those questions have been answered. I think Deutsche Bank just bundled up $1 billion worth of this toxic crap and offered it for sale on the open market for people to short each other into oblivion on it. I am really curious about starting a debt-backed cryptocurrency where we actually go and buy consumer debt, and that is the asset backing the coin.
Well, I mean, as long as we have a clean title and we have a really, really good ledger, like Paul Snow was talking about his project, to take various different things and package them in a way so that there's transparency every single time they change hands. Otherwise, you end up getting things like, oh, look at these robo-signed mortgages and these bundled mortgages where there's only 8 instead of 10, and we're going to go back and fill them out later, and then that never happens. And then what can happen is somebody that's paid every single payment on their mortgage ends up getting their house foreclosed on. And if you could make a system where that can't happen or doesn't happen or that's auditable, I think that'd be a fantastic thing to do.
We should talk sometime.
Good. Moving on to some more questions. We've got a comment from Joe Rockhead. He says, thanks to MK and Bitcoin Not Bombs. His daughter and him love the Bitcoin Rebel shirts. They arrived on time and they're awesome. It's his first purchase with Bitcoin, and it couldn't have been more easy and secure. So get your Bitcoin Rebel shirts at bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Thank you. That's awesome.
We've also got a couple more questions.
Thomas Hunt, you done froze up. We don't know what you're saying.
Oh, my hard drive's running. Any word on Carl Gray starting his own crypto hedge fund? I haven't heard of this. Anybody?
Yes, they are possible. They are going to exist. The largest issue with crypto hedge funds is the legal structure of the corporations that are custodians of the assets. But once you solve those problems, hedge funds are a no-brainer.
Yeah, Carl Gray's a great guy. I sat next to him during the premiere of the Rise and Rise of Bitcoin, and I had been drinking, and so I was like crying the whole time, and he kept looking over at me like, "What is wrong, dude? Can you find another seat?" But he's a really nice guy, so of course he didn't say anything. He's like trying to pat me on the back as I'm like snotting and stuff. So that's my story about Carl. He's awesome. I hope he does start one, because if there's anybody that's a good guy that would, that would try to do it right, it'd be him.
The only movies that make Blake cry are The Rise and Rise of Bitcoin and The Sandlot. We've got another question from Chris Ellis. He says, a property is a depreciating capital asset. Save for centralized manipulation, it should cost about 2 to 3 years of skilled labor. So I think he's arguing against the mortgage system again. And we've got a question from Brady McKenna, who writes, Bryce, do you see a decentralized stock exchange developing outside the influence of derivative manipulations and over-leveraged dangers, or a market that could be non-debt based without the paper movements that dilute the natural price discovery?
Okay, so after I've been on this whole kick about asset-backed networks and ABNs, now I can talk about the fact that we just hired David Zimbeck, who is the lead developer of BitHalo Black Halo, who is also the lead developer of Night Trader, which is a distributed exchange for blockchain-based currencies. So the answer is, yeah, we're probably about a year away or less.
Very exciting. Moving back to predictions or story of the week. Bryce, do you have a prediction or a story of the week?
Story of the week is we actually have our very first major NGO that has decided to adopt the use of cryptocurrency for fundraising, the Nature Conservancy, nature.org. BlockTech is proud to be partnering with them to launch an enormous fundraising campaign with their own coin, their own blockchain. They're going to have a complete merchant ecosystem, and we're going to make the coin total for the network. It will be 1 billion proof-of-work coins. And for every single coin that is minted on the network, the Nature Conservancy will plant 1 tree. So this is a truly fantastic application of blockchain technologies. And literally, that we sealed that deal maybe about 2 hours before this call. So I'm really excited about being able to use this to actually do something really good for a change.
Very cool. Great announcement. Victoria had to leave, but Megan Lords is here with a prediction or a story of the week.
So I don't have a prediction. I don't know if I really have a story of the week either, but I do want to let people know about my show on Wednesdays called Crypto Combos. I'm going to be having a really cool guest this next Wednesday named Andrea Castillo, and she writes some really awesome articles about Bitcoin from a very grounded perspective, and I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion, and so I just want to invite people to come watch that. I allow the audience to ask questions and interact, and it's also going to be available on the World Crypto Network the following day too, if you do miss the live version. So definitely come check it out, hang out with us, ask questions. I think it'll be really interesting.
Christoph, Atlas.
So my story of the week is a late-breaking story. So this is about Ross Ulbricht's case. A little while ago, Ross Ulbricht's defense filed a motion, basically a motion to dismiss several of the charges, saying that they suspected that the Fourth Amendment was violated in the accumulation of evidence. There's been a lot of suspicion that the NSA was involved in locating the actual Silk Road servers that led to them identifying Ross as a person of interest. And what the prosecution has responded back is that they said they exploited a pretty simple vulnerability or a server misconfiguration that gave up the IP address because it wasn't properly configured to go through Tor for part of the login page. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that basically at this point, anything that the prosecution in the United States says, especially if it's computer evidence, it's completely suspect. We can't believe it anymore because they have developed this habit of parallel construction, which means they can get a tip from the NSA, and then they can locate the the person that they want to go after, and then they come up with some other plausible explanation for how they located the individual, and they present that in court instead of. They don't mention anything about the NSA. If they're asked about the NSA, if they say, no, we've never talked to the NSA. NSA who? I don't even know anyone at the NSA. We have, NSA had nothing to do with it. So they can lie through their teeth, and they've been found to be doing this in the past, and come up with alternative explanations because they're not the ones that are on the stand. That's not considered to be perjury as long as they come up with another plausible explanation that could have led them to finding this individual. So essentially, I think he's in a bad spot because he's going up against a government that has targeted him. The Eye of Sauron is gazing upon him with its fiery gaze, and there's no justice in this situation. The justice system in the United States is tenuous in any circumstance, and when the government wants to go after you because you are challenging their most cherished institution, which is their central banking institution, then they care even less about the rules. They will come up with any vague technicality, any little scrap of paper that's been written in some distant part of the legal code, and they will come after you with everything they can. They don't care. Money is is no question for them because they can always print more money to continue the prosecution. And I think he's in a very bad spot. So even though his lawyer keeps coming up with these clever legal defenses for Ross, it's not looking good. The judge has already shown himself to be biased in this case, writing findings that clearly sided with the prosecution, accepting their arguments before the case has even been heard, and it's a really tough spot, and it's embarrassing, frankly, as someone that would be considered an American citizen, that any of the people around me would consider this to be a semblance of justice. It's really quite a shame. It's a mob lynching of this poor young man.
Oh, absolutely. And if I could just jump in for a second, we are a self-proclaimed constitutional republic. The Constitution is supposed to be the law of the land. And when you have incontrovertible repeat violations of the Fourth Amendment used to go through and explore what somebody's done wrong, that is something that everybody should be furious about. It's not just like, oh, this is a semantical technicality that you've tried to weasel your way through to get around the law. This is a constitutional decree upon which our country is supposed to be based. So if they prosecute him and put him in prison for this, I mean, it will be just another trampling of the Constitution. But this is something that should be absolutely terrifying for everyone. If they start to violate the Fourth Amendment and come through and put people in prison for political crimes, that's not just like the beginning of tyranny. That's full-blown, hardcore, horrific tyranny.
And and it's not even a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It is using an alleged, it's using it as an excuse in order to not have to reveal that these abuses had taken place to begin with. I mean, it's heresy compounded on top of abomination. It's ridiculous.
It's a mockery of a sham, and a sham of a mockery. It's a sham mockery. All right, well, I didn't write a prediction, but I was going to wing this one. Prediction: in the future, there will be more celebrity deaths. This is because there's more celebrities. This is not to take anything away from Joan or Betty White, who is also very funny, or Robin Williams, but if you really think about it, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to be celebrating, or whatever we do around celebrity deaths, we're going to be appreciating reality stars. We're going to be appreciating sitcom stars. We're going to be appreciating the cast of Saved by the Bell, who just had their very first unauthorized TV movie. So that's the level we're going to. Things are expanding. We're not going to be able to take days off at a time to celebrate Joan Rivers, Betty White, or Robin Williams in the future, because there's just going to be too many of them. We're going to have special shows dedicated to nothing but celebrity, and I mean reality stars, celebrity, death readings, etc. So watch out for that, because it's coming. Oh, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.